Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Hello and welcome back to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. I am Parishmita, your host for this very new episode. Today, we are going to discuss on meaningful connections at work. So let me introduce our speaker, Carolyn Swora. She is a trauma-informed leadership coach, consultant, and Human Spirit Ignitor. Hi, Carolyn. Would you like to say hello to our listeners?
Yeah, hello, everyone. It's great to be here.
It's nice to have you here. So let's begin with the topic, meaningful connections as well as activities that regulate our systems and make a better working environment. I want to ask, what is meaningful connection? Why do workplaces need to emphasize developing meaningful connections?
Yeah, so I think it's a really simple answer. A meaningful connection is when somebody feels seen and heard and respected. And that meaningful connection can happen really quickly, and sometimes it might take a little bit longer. But if the person that is speaking or the people in the conversation feel that they're seen, heard, and respected, that's going to be meaningful. And then, your second question about why do we need them? Well, we need them for a lot of reasons. First of all, our brains are wired for connection. And we know that through lots of science that our brain needs to be in connection with other people. And there are actually studies that show when we feel disconnected or lonely or not in connection with other people, there's a center in our brain that lights up. And it's the same center that lights up when we feel physical pain. So this notion of, it's nice to have people around or it's nice to have meaningful connections, it's not just a nice to have, it is a must have. Our brain needs that. Our brain also is a meaning-making machine. So it's always trying to make meaning of what's going on. And so those two things need to happen in our workplaces if we want to be able to access that part of our brain that does all of the powerful synthesis and analyzing. Because the meaningful connection part of our brain is, that needs to happen first before we can unlock all those other pieces that I just said.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that meaningful connection is something we need to cultivate, in our regular basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the workplaces. But nowadays we can see this, the connections are, breaking, or what we can say is like little less meaningful. So yeah. I think that is the major problem today.
Absolutely.
Bloated relations, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we're all stressed. We're all stressed. We're feeling overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. We've come off. I shouldn't say we've come off. We're in the midst of managing through so many crises in our world. And that activates our nervous system to be on hyper alert, to be overstimulated, and to be really hyper vigilant. And depending on our personality style, depending on our own nervous system, we're going to take in that data, that stimulus differently. I think it's pretty safe to say, like, most of us have exceeded our capacity, or close to it. And with that, again, we can't access the ability to regulate, the ability to think with the depth that we want to. So, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I know we're in different countries, but what you just said there is resonating over here in North America or in Canada, where I am right now. And really the meaningful connections is a way to regulate and bring our nervous system back down into a state of calm.
So how do you address stress, anxiety, as you have said, or depression at work? Is it because people today are getting more distant?
Yeah, well, I think so. So here's a school of thought that I really believe in, is that we have 3 centers of intelligence. So this is from the Enneagram world. But we have a heart center, a head center, and a body center. Okay. And each of these centers are intelligence areas where we can leverage and be able to. I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. When we can balance all 3 of those centers, we can be a very regulated, calm. Our full self can come out. What happens though is one of our personality types will fall into one of those three centers, and we begin to use that center for everything. Now, the body as a center of intelligence to take in information, I think has been completely undervalued, or at least seen as separate. So yes, it's great that we do these wellness things, and it's great that we do breathing and regulation. But what I'm saying is that when we combine that with understanding that relations, meaningful connections, our heart center, and our ability to analyze and think with words and numbers, or think with numbers and facts as our head center, when we can integrate all those together, we can get much better at work. But right now they're all separate. So if we look at it, in our workplaces, I think if we can start combining again those three things, like doing wellness activities or practices isn't just about my own well-being. It's really going to be about the well-being of my team and the people that I'm with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, obviously, like you were saying, to mindfully, develop meaningful connections, right?
Right.
So Carolyn, what is your take on meaningful connections in employees' overall well-being?
It's really important. And I think it's important to say that meaningful connections really, it does look different for everybody. And it's really, I think it's important for us as individuals to understand what that means. Mm-hmm. I don't mind big crowds. I don't mind a big room with lots of people. Yeah. That energy doesn't get overwhelming for me. And there's lots of people where that is. It's like, oof, a meaningful connection is going to be a nice quiet tea or coffee together. It might be, sitting and with a pet and having, an ability to bring that down, like to bring your nervous system down. So I think is really understanding, what does a meaningful connection mean to you? And there are no rules, right? So it's not like, oh, it needs to be 5 people and it needs to be 10 minutes. Like, we don't want to start putting parameters around it. But what helps you feel? When do you feel seen and heard and valued? And go with that. There's another statement that a colleague of mine says, and it really hit me. And he says, people never leave your presence neutral. Mm-hmm. They're either going to make you feel seen, and maybe just a little bit, mm-hmm. or you're going to feel not seen. And I think that's just a really great way to think about meaningful connections and that direct link to well-being. Even a simple smile in an elevator, or a, hey, how are you? That's a short little meaningful connection. Or, if you're in the office at work and somebody stops by to ask how your child is, or ask how your parent is if you're caregiving. Again, doesn't need to be a long comment, but just something to say, hey, I know you've got some other things going on outside of work. But what happens typically is we are racing to get to the next meeting. We're racing to pick up our kids. We're racing everywhere to get all these things done. And what happens is we're not present. We're not in the moment. And that moment of connection, as I've said a few times, like, it doesn't need to be a long, long time. It could be a short interaction as well.
As you have said, like developing connection even with a pet or anyone.
Yeah.
So do you think that is it necessary to, have this meaningful connection with everyone? Because there are some people who are, who are very much comfortable with this one-to-one conversations, okay, rather than in a crowd. So, like, what do you want to say for those people?
Yeah, so if I understand you, is what if somebody doesn't want to, be connected to a whole lot of people? It's totally fine. That's totally fine. I mean, we've got to honor who we are as individuals, and I'm not going to ask anybody to do something that they're not comfortable doing. But we do know from science is that we all need meaningful connections. So what does that mean for you? And make sure that you get what you need. And at work, if you are working on a team, if you are working in a small group, acknowledgement, and again, just letting other people know that you see them or hear them. Like in a meeting, thanks so much. That was interesting. Or, thanks for sharing your opinion. little things like that, like I said, people don't leave your presence neutral. They're either going to think, oh, well, why didn't Carolyn say anything to me? Maybe I said something stupid, or maybe I didn't say the right answer, right? Like we have all these stories that go on in the back of our mind. And so those little moments of meaningful connection. So even if you are someone who's introverted, or, you don't like big crowds, you don't need to disclose or divulge all your personal life or have these deep, meaningful or deep conversations with somebody else. But again, just that acknowledgement or thank you, or, a quick little email back. Thanks so much. I know you've had a busy week, or hope you're having a great week. Little things like that.
Yeah, definitely it matters a lot, especially in the workplaces.
It does. And some people might be listening thinking, oh, whatever, that's fluffy stuff. I don't have time for that. Okay, if that's the space that you're in, that typically is coming from a place of being very guarded and protected. And if we're going to find our way out of this, I would just encourage your listeners, just try one little step, like thanking somebody, or a smile, or an email back, thanks so much. Hope you're doing well. Just see what it does.
It will do magic. I can assure that acknowledging is very important in our day-to-day life. Yes,
it really is. And especially when we're running on overdrive, that short little bit of acknowledgement and validation, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, it's great. It pulls you back into that present moment, which is what we're looking.
Absolutely. So do you think employees or leaders today focus more on themselves and forget to check on their co-workers? And how is it like dismantling the entire working environment?
Yeah, I'd say, I think people are in full-on survival mode right now. In fact, I know they are. I was speaking with somebody last week, one of my clients, and they were sharing, like, I can't even keep my own head above water, let alone think about my team. And, they felt that at the end of the day, they had barely enough energy to get through their own day. And they'd had some outbursts at people on their team and felt really bad about it. So, when we can't think of others, again, we lose that ability to stay connected, and our brain needs that co-regulation, being with others. In fact, there's lots of research now showing that co-regulation, or that ability to be in a calm state around others, is really helpful and needed if we're going to find our own regulation in ourselves. So we really do need to have that ability to look in and look out for each other if we want to find our way out of all of this chaos and instability right now.
Sure. I cannot agree more.
Yeah, and I think there's one other thing I'll say too. So I'm sure you've heard of the whole oxygen mask metaphor.
No.
If you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you put, when you get on an airplane and they say, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help the other person.
Yes.
So that's a statement, here in North America, we'll hear, keep your oxygen mask on, or put yours on first, like look after yourself first. I don't like that metaphor, because for many years, I thought I had my oxygen mask on. I was like, I got it on. Like, I'm fine. I got my mask on and I'm looking after other people as well. But I think the piece that's missing from that metaphor is we can put that mask on all we want. But if there's not oxygen pumping through that mask is just a mask.
Oh my God, that makes sense.
Doesn't it? And so I was wearing this oxygen mask for years. There was no oxygen coming through. But I wasn't slowing down enough to even check it out. It was just like, check, mask on. So I think, what does oxygen look like in terms of like those meaningful connections? They're important, and you got to check and make sure that oxygen mask is working.
Yeah.
We're going to need different things as we navigate through this. Maybe you do need to go out with a bunch of friends. Maybe you do need to, have maybe just a couple, or maybe it's with your children, or, maybe you just need to go out and watch a movie by yourself, and just get reconnected with yourself. I think that's probably another interesting aspect of meaningful connections, is what is it that you need, and what's going to make you feel connected.
Yeah. So Carolyn, don't you think employees need to cultivate the art of questioning, or how do they practice asking better questions in conversations?
Yeah. And I mean, I love all these questions were great. So yeah, when we ask questions, when we can cultivate this art of questioning, it allows us to be in better connection, right, with each other.
Absolutely.
Here's what my experience has been, is that when we are in hyperactivity mode, trying to get stuff done, we lose the ability to be curious and to be present because we're focusing on stuff that needs to get done. And if I'm focusing on the 3 other meetings I have later today, instead of focusing on you and our conversation, I'm going to naturally switch to a judgment side because you're either going to go too fast or too slow for me. I have got an agenda that I'm trying to meet, and I switch a little bit more to the judgment side, and it pulls me out of curiosity. For us to be in a truly curious place, we have to, again, be present. And I would say it's not about asking the right question or the best question, which we can get tripped up on. It's just about being present and letting the conversation unfold. And that has a bit of risk to it because, oh my gosh, what if somebody asks me a question I don't have an answer to? Or what if I say the wrong thing? And now all the judgment's coming back in on ourselves. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I don't say the right thing? And then we lose the ability to truly be present and curious. So the long way to answering your question, yes, I think we need to cultivate the art of questioning. I would say on top of that, we need to cultivate the art of curiosity and let go of thinking about asking the right things or doing it the right way. Just be present and be with the other person.
Absolutely. Like, we can take this example of us. Suppose before starting this conversation or podcast, we asked each other, like, how are you?
Yeah.
So it goes to everyone, even in the workplaces, like, how are you? Even if you know that person or you don't know that person on a regular basis. But these are minor things that we should keep in mind.
Yeah. Well, and we also, like, you know, where are you from right now? What time of the day is it? Like, it was also, because I know sometimes people get a little bit like the how are you, and that it's sort of an empty question. But, you know, we did have that other little, you know, what part of the country are you in? And those things, our brain, when it feels that connection, it starts to build a little trust. And there are neurotransmitters that help to create and build that stronger connection. So in this case, like, that would be oxytocin. And neurochemically, it helps us to feel more connected to each other as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on role of corporate wellness programs in redefining or building meaningful and mindful relationship among employees?
Yeah, I think they are so, so important. I think what they do is they help employees and people and their families, because I know many of these programs are offered to the whole family. They help them instill practices. They help them learn about what wellness can mean to them. So it gives them an opportunity for knowledge acquisition. And I know that that's really important for people to find the practices that work for them. But ultimately, the employees need to access them and they need to put them in place. And so it's not an employer's job to tell everyone what to do, because wellness and meaningful connections is a very individual thing. But it's an organization's responsibility to make them available. But it definitely goes both ways.
Yeah, actually, you're right. It should be both ways. Employers and employees specifically, they need to be more concerned about their health. Right. It should come from both the ends.
Yeah. Well, and I think also too, you know, there are structures within our organizations, and I don't know what it's like in your country, but as leaders, we need to start addressing wellness in how we operate in our day-to-day. And by that, I mean, we're not going to schedule back-to-back meetings. We're going to have at least a 15-minute break before meetings. So I don't know what your calendar looks like in the day, but when I think back to my corporate days, it was 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1. There was no break in there, no 15 minutes break, or 10 minutes even. And those are systemic changes as leaders that organizations should be supporting. Because if we continue to think, oh, I can just push through it, you're going to burn out and you're not going to be able to get out of this state of overwhelm. So there's employees' responsibilities. There's employer responsibilities. And I think as employees, we need to be saying, hey, can we start this meeting in 10 minutes? Like, I know it started at 1. I just coming off a back-to-back. Or if you're the one responsible for setting up meetings, end it 10 minutes before the hour. Like, we need to start doing little things like that. And I say they're little, but they're very big, monumental things to just give us that space. And that's just one example. I could give you a few others, but does that resonate? Does that resonate with you? Yeah.
So would you like to suggest our listeners about the importance of creating meaningful relationship for greater wellness at work?
Yeah. So I know I've talked about this a little bit already, but I would say get really clear on what that looks like for you. Is a meaningful connection going out for lunch with somebody? Mm-hmm. Is it dropping by their cubicle or their desk? But I know that we all work in different places. Does it mean sending a text message? Mm-hmm. When I was a sales manager, this was several years ago before the pandemic, but I allotted 1 hour every day in my calendar just to send like voicemails or call the reps on my team just to check in. What do you got planned for the week? What are you really proud of? What's something that you've done? So I'd say understand what it looks like for you. Ask your teammates, what it might look like for them. They might not even have an answer because we're not really used to asking each other these types of questions. So just start checking in with people. A little text message, a DM. Hey, what are you proud of? What's something that you did last week that, you're really happy about? Or is there something can we go grab a coffee or something? Like just start doing some of these things, and see where it goes. I'd say the other thing too is just really do your best to practice some calming techniques, to calm your nervous system, be it through breathing or going for a walk in nature, or mindfulness if you've got any meditation, but do those throughout the day. I mean, I'm a big fan of just breathing. I can do that in a meeting. Nobody even knows what I'm doing. But if I'm doing, a longer exhale out and deeper inhales, it's just bringing a bit of regulation to my nervous system as well. And I think, those will all, those small little things will add up to our nervous systems be a little bit calmer. And when our nervous systems are calmer, we can create more meaningful connections.
Absolutely. So first thing is like quote unquote checking in.
Yeah.
And second is being mindful or practice spiritual wellness.
Yeah.
In short.
Absolutely.
So coming to the end of the session, and the last question. So where will our listeners find you, Carolyn?
So you can find me on Instagram at Carolyn Swora, CarolynSwora. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn. So feel free to join or follow or just connect on there. And my website, CarolynSwora.com. There's lots of stuff happening there. I've got some Spark Weeks and Spark Sessions, and I've got some new programs that will be coming out soon as well. So people can find me there.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for coming to our show. It was so nice talking to you.
Thanks for having me. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.